All right, you might have noticed that we have a new whistle, and that should tell you that this is the measure of an episode.
Yes, it is.
Where
Continue.
we are continuing
Are you checking
mission.
email? That did not take long.
I'm on a new computer. I don't have my script. So our continuing mission is to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek and not just pretty decent or pretty crappy TV. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And the three criteria.
Oh, using three criteria. Yeah, Paul, why don't you tell us?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll continue. The three criteria by which we judge these episodes are, number one, does it have an obvious expression of science fiction throughout the plot that is intrinsic to the plot of the episode? Number two, is there a basic expression of morality that is either addressed or it doesn't necessarily have to be the plot, but is inherent to the plot? And the third one is we don't know yet. That's the third one. So maybe you can tell us. Maybe you could send us an email that perhaps informs what you think could be the third criteria as a listener. Maybe
we figure it out in this episode. Spoiler, we don't.
Is that
but
oh, well, that sucks. Because I was all excited, and I probably would have forgotten that you said that. So I was going to be, but now I can't even be excited in this moment.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just didn't want to leave the audience hanging. I mean, you could totally delete it, and they'll never know. They'll be like, "Wait, what was it? You never even discussed it."
That's a great idea. Actually, I think I'm going to do that. It's on theme with us,
right? I know there's so many things where, like, yeah, we make side comments where I'm like, anyway, I'll talk about that later, and it's never brought up.
Never
again.
happens. Or we reference things that have never seen the light of day.
Right.
That happens a lot. But anyway, this episode is the original series, season 2, episode 3. No, not episode 3. Episode 13, Obsession.
Yeah.
And I'll read the blurb.
Okay.
Captain Kirk obsessively hunts for a mysterious cloud creature he encountered in his youth. By which he probably means just a few episodes ago, because that's all they encounter.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think this is our 4th episode of the original series, and it's our 17th episode with Nebulous Cloud from the original series.
The math works out. We'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, I actually kind of liked this episode. I have to say. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like I always go into these original series because I didn't really grow up on them. I'm only really watching them for the first time now as an adult. And I always go into them sort of like, I wish this was a next gen, or I wish this was a Voyager, Well, you kind of expect it to be some kind of level of cheesy, campy, like, okay, I get how like this was pioneering sci-fi, and so this was considered great, but like we have so much now, it's not that good. But yeah, it's nice when we get an episode like this where it genuinely surprises you. Well, and I there are people who get a nice buzz from watching things that was made. So watching something that was made 50 years ago. Sure. And I mean, sometimes I can get that, but this is actually good television, and it's not good bad. It's not bad. It's not good bad. It's just sort of. It's good, but it's in the vein of a 60s television show. And so, I don't know, I just can't get excited about that. But I usually end up liking the episode. So maybe I need to get out of my own head and, kick my own ass and just be excited about it. But it actually was entertaining. I had a few problems with it. And I mean, I don't know if you want to save your verdict for the end, but I will not consider this no, I will. And I know it sounds like I'm going to leave Paul to debate this episode with himself, and I'll just see you guys next week. I thought that this was not a proper Star Trek episode, so I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah. Yes, I believe it was a proper Star Trek episode, and we can get into as to why at a certain point. But like I said, maybe the number one reason I think this is that they jump right into the plot. We start out and they're already at work on this something. They've found some sort of element. They're on an away mission, and that's what kicks us off. They said it's 21 times harder than diamonds, but then they just easily phaser off a slice of it. Right. Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I mean, are diamonds like I've never understood that. Like diamonds are considered the hardest natural piece of material on the planet, right? Correct. but yet you can buy things that have obviously been carved and shaped and broken into different pieces, right? So
right. And diamonds also shatter when you drop them. The reason why they're considered the hardest material on Earth is because there is no other mineral that can scratch their surface. And like I think calcite's considered one of the softest because everything can scratch it up. Like
blackboards? Can a blackboard scratch the surface of? Is a blackboard writing the chalk, or is chalk writing on the blackboard? We'll never know.
Yeah, no, it's well, I mean, especially since everybody's moved to whiteboards, like it's not even. It's like, you know, how can a rotary? Can you stop a rotary on a dial? Like,
obviously, yes. Everyone's going to know that. Don't be ridiculous. So anyway, Kirk smells something, literally.
Yep.
And that's the inciting incident for this episode.
It was so random where he's like, "Do you smell something?" I actually thought that it was it was going to tempt him. Like something was going to it was almost going to be like a drug that forced him to be obsessed about this cloud, and he was going to like hunt it down to be with it, a la Zephram Cochrane. And so, right. You know, and his face, like, and the fact that he smelled it, and he's like, it's, you know, it's something that I haven't smelled for 11 years. I was like, oh, okay. This is
Mom?
Well, it's like, this is, you know, Kirk raping a cloud. That's cool. Okay.
So he smells something. It's dichronium or dichronium.
Dichronium, yeah.
I feel like dichronium. Yeah. They kind of swallowed a couple times. Not dichronium, the word. But so there's like 3 red shirts down there, and he sends them off immediately to go investigate.
Yes.
And I'm like, I wonder, are they all going to die at the same time, or is it going to be like piecemeal in this one?
Yeah. And you were both right.
I was wrong. Or just birth wrong.
I didn't say...
I said birth wrong because you said both right, and my brain did this weird bridge. Did we just create something?
It's my birth wrong. Like, that's the thing that you get your inheritance that you don't want.
Yeah, what else would it be? Would a birth wrong? What does that mean? A birthright is something you get.
I mean,
because I guess it's an inheritance.
Yeah.
So what would a birth wrong be?
Being second born, maybe.
Your birth wrong. No,
being born.
I can't. My brain. I can't wrap my brain around it for some reason. It's like I'm trying to like look at one of those things where if you stare at the artwork for a while, like it will.
One of those magic eyes.
Another picture thing will come up. Except I'm like right on the cusp, and it's not like every time I almost latch onto it, it goes away. That's what it feels like right now.
Oh, it's a sailboat.
I'm like, no, it's not. There's nothing here. That was me. Whenever anybody was like, they immediately got it. Like, I was like, what do you say? Like, I feel like everybody was in on this con.
Right.
Nothing.
Oh, I know. Me too. Yep. 100%. Well, and what makes it even worse is it started in like 3rd grade with my parents. So, you know, I'm like, stop messing with me. Like, there's nothing here.
You start destroying every painting you come across.
See the sailboat now. So one of the things that I liked about that was the guy who survived. Depending on who you asked, his name was either Rizzo or Rizzo.
I noticed that because I wrote it down through the course of the episode, and I kept going back, refining and replacing whatever the new permutation of his name was.
Yeah, I've noticed Kirk has a tendency to just, I mean, in addition to having his own speech pattern, he has his own pronunciation on things. And he completely ignores, like, he believes that I mean, I guess as captain, you've got to do this, but he believes that he's right. And it doesn't matter if everybody else is saying it differently on the show. He says it the way that he originally read it. And I don't know if it's because it's William Shatner or if like he I don't know if the crew never corrects him or if they do. And he's like, do you know who I am? So...
Well, Shatner at best skimmed the scripts, right?
Oh yeah.
So, you know, I'm going to probably say that he's just misreading it, and nobody had the balls to say, "Sir, it's not that. It's this." It's sort of like Lando in Empire Strikes Back, where nobody had the balls to say it's pronounced Han.
Right. Han. Yeah.
Han. He's like Han, Han. All right, here we go.
Nailed it.
Moving on.
All right, so they go. Kirk finds them all pale white, little red shirt icicles,
which was cool. It was very kind of, to be honest, very I guess strikingly haunting. I guess because you're like, what's going on here? And they found like they could have just left it as that, as they're just pale, but they went the extra step of saying, oh, all of the corpuscular. Nope, that means you eat at night. What did he say?
I think he said corpuscles.
Corpuscular and diurnal. Diurnal means you eat at dusk, and corpuscular, I don't know, means you like
the daytime.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's
diurnal means day. Like you're a creature that is active during the day. That's what diurnal means.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But yes, it's corpuscles. Puscle.
Yeah. So I was almost right.
Yeah, you were. And then you said corpuscular, and you were like, no, he sleeps at night. Like, or you eat at night. And like, what? No, it's still blood vessels. But then you corrected yourself and said corpuscular, which I actually didn't know.
Now you know how the director felt directing William Shatner.
Right. No, I'm pretty sure it's this.
Do you know who I am? So,
do you know?
So anyway, so the coolest part is that they went the extra step. And they described how the alien was killing, or how whatever this thing that we don't know what it is was killing people.
Yes.
Right? And so that was interesting. And then there's this, they throw gasoline onto the mystery. Kirk says to Bones, go look at this tape.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we're like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder, what does Kirk know that we don't? And we can kind of see that Kirk is slowly becoming obsessed with whatever is happening, right? And he's obviously keeping it from us, and that's the part that never really pays off for me, because later he says to Spock, "I want you to go look at these tapes and tell me what you think," right? Mm-hmm. Which never really gets handled, because I don't think Bones ever says, "Oh, I found out something like this." He sort of says, "Oh, this is the same thing that's happening, that was happening in these tapes." You know, they're getting the corpuscles, they're getting sucked out at night.
It's a corpuscle sucker.
Yeah. And he confirms that, but nothing really comes from it. And like, I don't think Bones learns anything from it. And I was just like, oh, is it like when Kirk said to Spock, go look at the tapes, I was like, is Kirk just rickrolling everybody? Like, is he telling everybody?
So they go, and obviously because they're getting rickrolled, they don't want to share it with anyone else. So Spock sits down.
Oh yeah, it's obviously self-perpetuating.
Right,
rickroll.
Well, no. So to speak to that point, I think at least what the script got from it was when Spock had that amazing directed moment where he told Kirk that it wasn't his fault.
Right.
I think like there's no way that Spock would have been able to glean that information from just Kirk telling them. So that was why script-wise they needed to go review the material. But you're right. If it was like a real life situation, Kirk would have told them what he knew instead of saying, you know, your information's in here.
Right.
Don't open that door,
sense.
Jack.
Yeah. And I felt like Spock, I really liked Spock in this episode because I mean, again, this is the why we love
Spock
so much. Yeah. And so Data /
Spock's
Spock.
a jerk. Right.
And,
right. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was getting my moments mixed up.
And that's Geordi. That's Dick Geordi too. Don't forget about why
Dick Geordi. Yep.
Dick. Why Dick is a Geordi.
That makes my wife really uncomfortable, by the way. When
Dick Geordi?
No, when I'm like, I'm just gonna whip out my Geordi. She's like, please don't.
Does he have glasses on beforehand, or do you put them on like afterward?
No, it's for preparation.
The visor.
Like, you know, when she sees the visor on, she's like, oh god.
Oh, I would say we'll put a picture in the show notes, but probably not.
No, we'll put it behind the Patreon wall.
Just be a banana with some visors like sharpied onto it. So, okay, then Ensign Garavik walks onto the bridge. And he walks onto the bridge, and the way that they framed it and the way that the music acknowledges it, I thought, oh, this is the cloud.
Me too. Because the fact that he was just like hovering behind them, no pun intended.
Just floating. Do you smell something?
Oh, Ensign. Is that a new cologne?
And it quickly lands before they can turn around to see who's behind him, and he's like pretending to do something. Yeah. And then when they turn back around, he starts floating behind them again.
Oh, Dick Cloud.
Dick Cloud.
But yeah, no, I completely agree.
There can only be one.
I 100% believe that it was the cloud, and it was because they had just said how it could change its matter on a molecular level.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is it. And I was like, crap. I don't want to watch this thing where there's somebody new on the bridge, and he's somebody that everybody knew, but we've never met before. And so you're like, well, he's going to die, or he's an imposter. Right. And I was like, we've done this before. We don't need to do this again.
Yeah, exactly.
But then Kirk says, I couldn't remember if Kirk had said Garevik before that ensign walks onto the bridge, because he says, when he's talking to Ensign Garevik, he says, so your father was ... And then he's like, yes, he was. And I was like, wait a minute. I didn't know, am I supposed to, is this just like interesting writing where they're like, oh, we're going to find out later? Or did I miss it when Kirk said his name? Did you catch that he said his name?
I did not. But I feel like at this point it's kind of irrelevant whether or not he said it, because we still because that was how it was presented. You know, whether he said Garevik originally and then he said it again, it doesn't matter, because the pertinent part was when he says that means your father was, yes, sir.
Right, but we don't know that Kirk knew his dad. We just know
exactly.
We don't know that was connected to this whole thing.
Right.
So
yeah, this episode was very well written as far as peeling back layers and leaving the audience in the dark for as long as possible.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I mean that's the part that I liked the most about it. It wasn't beating us over the head with beats.
Well, and it wasn't like what was that other episode that we just watched where I know the Voyager episode, but I feel like there was one where we learned information. Nope, different podcast. Never mind.
That was Freakonomics.
Yeah, I'm also a guest speaker on that.
They go on another away mission, and Garevik screws up. He hesitates, and later we find out that that Kirk and Garevik are sort of suffering from the same guilt problem.
Now they do, because they both have done the same thing. Like, it wasn't like Garevik hesitated because he was suffering from the same guilt. It was
yeah.
But regardless, we didn't know that until later. Yeah.
Right. That comes back later.
Yeah. We knew that Garevik was distressed and Kirk through the ringer. What is that? Something through the ringer?
He was put through the ringer?
Put through the ringer, yeah. Kirk really puts him through the ringer at the interrogation.
Right. And he sends him to his room.
Yep. You go to your room and think about what you've done. Well, and so then this is where that moment was, and I worry that you have now shattered my vision, because the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, this is so awkward, and then I immediately panicked, and I thought to myself, am I going to see that every time now? That it was that great cinematography moment where Kirk was in shadow in the foreground and Spock was in the background, talking to him about how it really wouldn't have changed anything.
Right.
And Kirk kind of storms out of the room all pouty, and Spock has to walk around to the front of the desk, but he has to stay in camera. So, so his head stays in the line of vision and his body swivels around the desk.
Yeah.
If you hadn't I'm pretty sure if you hadn't brought it up before, I never would have noticed that. But as he was stepping around it, I was like, why is he, that's so awkward.
By the way, speaking of cinematography, etc., that kind of thing, I think this episode had the original special effects.
I think so too.
Because they looked crappy. They looked better. Because I was thinking that, we will know if we ever see an episode with the original effects. But I was like, it's sort of more in between my expectation and the new stuff. Mm-hmm. It actually looked pretty good. I was surprised.
Yeah. So the only reason I know that is because in the special effects update, which I was reading in the trivia, they added the crater on the planet, and I don't remember seeing that. They added the crater from the explosion at the end.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing that on the planet. And so when I
wonder what happened.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I wonder if there's like a rights issue or something. I didn't find anything about it. So.
I don't know. Yeah. Oh, well. So Bones confronts Kirk because they realize, hey, sounds like, you're sacrificing a lot of people who we know for sure that we can help to satisfy your obsession here.
Yes.
And so he talks for minutes. Like the scene is minutes long, like maybe 5 minutes long. And then he lets Spock in. Like Spock was waiting outside, like to gang up on them both. It was really weird that like Spock was just okay. Bones was like, they had a little powwow before they went into Kirk's room. It's like, well, yeah, you wait here.
Yeah, you stay out here and I'll open the door to let you in, which, that's fine. Like I'm going to talk to him for a little bit, but like after 3 minutes, maybe, like, I mean, I guess being a Vulcan as well, he probably understood the situation and was willing to patiently wait for as long as it took. But yeah, like if it would have been Scotty or Sulu, who's not in this episode, like just kind of peeking their head in, and like, are you still talking? Oh, okay, I'll wait. Sorry, didn't want to ruin the moment.
Well, Bones was like, okay, wait for the signal. Spock's like, what's the signal? And Bones gave him the "you'll know it when you see it."
Right.
And the "you know it when you see it" was, I'm going to come out and get you and tell you to come in. Just to play a little prank. Because I guess although it's not really quite very evident, it's not evident in the episodes that we've watched, they have sort of this fun rivalry. Like they have that in the movies, for sure. There's this sort of like, you green-blooded Vulcan, that stuff. I don't see that. At least I haven't seen very much of that yet. So I would expect Bones to be playing these kind of pranks on Spock all the time, wasting his time at any given moment.
Well, it's interesting that you say you don't see it because I feel like it came up twice in this episode. It's usually only in like little bits of dialogue. Like there's not really banter and there's not really pranks played with each other. But when Spock comes in and says, "I need your advice," and then Bones is like, "Well, then I need a drink." And Spock is like, "I don't understand the correlation between those two."
I guess you're right. I guess that is sort of where where it comes from. That conversation just felt very awkward to me. Like it wasn't written well enough to sort of be fun banter, and it just didn't feel natural. It felt like they were reading it, right? It's almost like they didn't have a handle on that whole relationship yet. And it just didn't read as like, oh, this is fun, the way it reads in like the later movies.
Right. Yeah, no, I can see that. What I actually took from it was that Bones was making a joke. I mean, yes, this was on the writers. They definitely should have made this a little bit clearer. But what I inferred was Bones was making a joke. Spock didn't get the joke, and Bones had no recovery for that. So,
right. When somebody doesn't get a joke,
Yeah, and usually...
Which never happens to me.
Well, usually in a script, the dialogue is written in such a sharp way that Bones would have had a response. And so the fact that he didn't, did he forget the line or was it in there? Oh, one thing that I wanted to mention, one of the two guys who died on the planet at the very beginning, one of them can be seen in the background throughout the rest of the episode.
What, as being dead or as a different character?
As just an unnamed ensign in the background, like as an unnamed crew member. And so they're shown in the distance and it's not really obvious. You have to definitely be paying attention for him. But once you see him, like he is very clearly there. And the actor and the crew or the writers kind of joked that they never got to film the scene where he was miraculously revived.
Well, or it's just that, he's playing all the different characters, just using different wigs.
Right.
And Kirk will address several different people on the bridge, and each time it's the same guy turning around in a different wig.
And Kirk just never turns around to see him running around. Like he knows the routine so well that he knows like who Kirk is going to call on next.
But we see him running behind Kirk to get to his next station. And Kirk never breaks out of character.
Yeah, just never catches on. Yeah. That's funny.
So I loved Nurse Chapel, by the way, in this episode. I thought it was great. Loved her. This is my first real kind of dose a significant dose of Nurse Chapel. That was Nurse Chapel, right?
Yeah. The one from the one from our just last week's episode.
Well, but she's like I don't think she has one line.
Oh yeah,
right?
no. She randomly beamed down to the planet to give the doctor his syringe.
Also, this is my first time actually realizing. I'm sure you've told me this in the past, but first time it registered that is Majel Barrett.
Yeah, Loxana Troy. Yep.
Yeah. Major Barrett. I saluted, by the way.
Yes, I know.
You couldn't hear me saluting, but I was saluting.
I'm watching How I Met Your Mother right now. Like we're literally as we're doing this podcast. No, it's what I'm back on. And so so I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. Because everybody gets my jokes.
Yeah,
nobody not gets my jokes.
Okay, that's starting to get funny. Because
everybody gets my jokes.
Anyway, so that was Nurse Chapel, and you really liked her moment because she just finally got to really display her acting chops, or what?
Because it was first of all, it was a little bit of sass, and I like me some sass.
Sure,
and it was not just like there was some intent behind the character, right?
Okay.
She had something to do. And she had some autonomy as a character. She wasn't just following orders.
Gotcha. Right. And she kind of took it upon herself, like as a nurse, not as Majel Barrett, to get this guy to eat the food. And she said, like, I've got this prescription right here. And then the punchline to that is McCoy is like, why did you have this? And
yeah. And they didn't have to explain to us what happened.
Right.
Right.
Oh, it's
we
best.
Got it.
Right.
I know, like we didn't need the debrief from the joke.
Yeah. So good. This is while the writers still knew that the audience could understand what was going on.
Right, because there wasn't much to look at, so we had to listen, right? Because the screen was so small.
Right. Yeah, it was still considered radio at this point.
Right. They thought the screen was just the on button. So Garavik, he turns off his air, which I was like, okay. And then the cloud attacks the attacks Enterprise, the. I don't know what's going on with my brain today. Which was an interesting. I don't know. Like that was a fun. Okay, so this happens earlier where they're like chasing the Enterprise is chasing the Enterprise.
And it became a time loop episode, totally out of left field. It was just.
Makes me want to listen to this episode like backwards to see if anything fun happens.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I really liked was Spock. I feel like he does this a lot, but I really liked how Spock changed his mind to the creature without telling anybody. Like he didn't make an announcement of I've amended my opinion on the cloud, or he just calls it creature, and Bones is like creature, and and he says, well, yeah, it deliberately turned around and attacked and is now in the vents. Like it was intentional.
Right. There was no, you were right, I was wrong. It was just that I have enough information. And so I'm now amending my my stance on the subject.
Right.
That was the clever writing bit.
Yeah. And then McCoy spoke for both of them by saying, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
And I did enjoy the reveal where we think Spock is dead or in some way debilitated by being in the room where the cloud monster was. And he kind of walks out and we get the debrief in case anybody missed that he has green blood, which I think we needed at that point. This is only season 2, right?
Well, so I think we knew
forgotten
in the episode that he had green blood. I think McCoy said something about it, or no, that comes up later where he talks about like he's got green blood and so it wouldn't affect him on the surface. But this was the first time where they mentioned that his blood is copper based, not iron.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking like
interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a cool little reveal. But then I also realized when you create a show with a unique alien character, like you're kind of making it up as you go, and you can basically say anything that as long as it doesn't contradict previous stuff, like it's just new information that this character is presenting to everyone. It's not like I can't imagine that before this episode they were like, and his blood is copper based, not iron, which we'll use later.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of okay with that.
Oh,
I don't
for sure.
think a character has to be totally fleshed out on paper before the pilot is written, right?
Right.
I think that you can. I mean, things get better with permutation. I mean, I think that. I mean, frankly, I like Spock better in the movies, not necessarily because I like the movies better, but because the permutations of Spock that Nimoy played over and over and over again, they just got better. He got better at it,
Right.
Same thing with the writing. I enjoy it better. That's probably why I like TV shows these days more than I like movies, because it gets ultimately better and better and better if nothing bad happens to the actual writers. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I felt that it was a nice little reveal. We don't need to have info dumps in the pilot about characters that then has to be adhered to. I think with such a long running show like Star Trek, they kind of run into issues because they have so much of a legacy of information,
right?
Of whatever you want to call that, of detail that's been put into the universe, that they feel they have to adhere to it. But then you kind of you write yourself into a corner every time because and you also, it would take years to write a script because you have to reference the encyclopedia of legacy of Star Trek.
Right.
So that's where the retconning comes in. And so I kind of am okay with the retconning sometimes. Okay, so the funniest moment, I think perhaps in all of the episodes that we've watched in TOS.
Okay.
Is when Kirk takes Garrovick down to entrap and snare the cloud to be able to blow it up, right?
Yes. And
Garrovick takes it upon himself that he is going to sacrifice himself to save, because there's some sort of exchange. Why I don't remember what it is, but
they needed somebody as bait, and Garrovick thought that Kirk was going to sacrifice himself, so Garrovick was going to offer himself instead.
And so Garrovick needs to incapacitate Kirk, and apparently it's standard Starfleet training. The way you incapacitate somebody is by karate chopping them onto the neck.
Yes,
right. And I literally laughed out loud. It was so Austin Powers. This is where Austin Powers got it.
Right, of course. Yeah,
right?
It's definitely, a 60s thing, for sure.
And so, I don't know. That was, I totally took me out of it. Because the only thing that would have made this better is if he just said karate chop as he was karate
Judo
chopping
chop.
him.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been so great. Well, and see, what I took was, my own move used against me. Nice try.
And it totally gets rid of Kirk is sort of stunned
right
for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but only for a second. The moment Garrovick picks him back up, Kirk is ready to go again. It was there's my possum move.
It's oh, what happened? All right, back to it. Yeah. So they do some fun. They actually did something very similar to that they did in, what was the Scotty one? Next Generation Scotty one. What was that called?
Relics.
Yeah. They did sort of the same thing where they have to, there's some precise timing of beaming and instantiating some sort of thing to happen. You got to beam out almost immediately afterward, that kind of thing.
Well, so Spock said something like re-energizing or trying again or something like that. So I pictured him where my thought immediately went to was, he's okay, hang on, I'm going to beam him back down. I'm going to try this again.
All right, test run over. We will do the real thing now.
Right. Okay, Captain, detonate the bomb.
Yeah, and so they have this tense moment that was actually, I will say, tense. It was tense because I knew that Kirk would not die, but I was wondering if Garrovick was going to die, and I actually did think that Garrovick was going to die.
Yes,
Garrovick was going to get taken care of.
Yeah,
and I thought that it's this is the obvious ending, even though I wasn't expecting it. But then they both make it back okay.
Yeah, which also subverted the Star Trek trope. The new character survived the episode. Yeah,
exactly. So not only does Garrovick survive, and which him dying would have been, I think a good part of the theme of the show, which is obsession, right? He died for his obsession because he felt guilty. Same thing with Kirk. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. But then, so there's this whole overhanging thing where there's these vaccines that are going to expire that the Enterprise was supposed to usher to the people who needed the vaccines, and they kept on telling him, look, these people are going to die, the vaccines can't wait. We got to go. You're letting your obsession get in the way. That gets handled too. And so at the end of the episode, Kirk says, all right, let's go get those vaccines. I was expecting Spock to say, no, they expired. All the people are dead.
Right.
Your obsession cost something.
Yeah.
Instead, at the end, they just go about their business and save the people with the vaccine. And there is no consequence for his obsession.
Right.
And that made me not like the ending of this episode because it just sort of wraps up, just like a wrap up, right? It would have been so much better if there was a cost for his obsession, for him to learn something. And he doesn't really, either Garevik dying would have made him learn something, or all the people that need the vaccine are dead.
Right. No, that's a great point. I wonder, again, kind of the same thing. I wonder if that was one of the original endings and the studio said, no, you can't do that with Star Trek. Because, I'm thinking of like City on the Edge of Forever and the episode that just aired with us, The Paradise Syndrome. Like there was something lost at the end before they left. And so I wonder if they couldn't continually have downer endings like that.
Right.
And so they just kind of had to tie everything up in a neat little bow at the end of this episode. Or if they just, they didn't think about it and they just wanted everything to end happily ever after.
Or they just didn't have time. They didn't. I mean, I guess the bummer ending makes the most sense. They didn't want to have a bummer ending. I mean, this was only season 2, but I don't know. I would have loved the episode so much better.
Right. No, I completely agree. Yeah. Well, because no matter which one it was, what's cool about that is no matter like either one would have taught him a different lesson. It would have been the same thing about like the cost of having an obsession, but
the cautionary tale.
Yeah, but like one of them would have been being so obsessed about something you can lose your life, and the other one would be being obsessed about something hurts other people.
Yeah, either one would have worked.
Yeah,
and they avoided both of them.
Right. Oh, I'm so right. Oh man, I was okay with the ending just because I knew it was going to end in a neat little wrap up anyway, so I was okay with it. But yeah, hearing the two different ways that it could have ended, like I'm really disappointed with this episode now. Like it's a great episode. Like it was absolutely fun through the whole thing, and just knowing if you know that it has a happy ending at the end, I feel like if you go in just recognizing it's 60s episodic TV series where they reset at the end, except for the occasional episode where a guest star will die, then you won't be disappointed. But yeah, like knowing that there are those occasional dark episodes, and this episode did have the opportunity to touch on like a pretty heavy issue, and just didn't. Yeah, that's disappointing.
It's too bad.
Yeah,
but it still qualifies as a proper Star Trek episode. Even though I didn't like how they handled the morality, there's still heavy morality in this episode, and there was just enough science fiction for me to get around, like with the way that the cloud kills people. I wasn't a fan of the cloud specifically. I'm tired of clouds.
Right. Yeah. I wonder.
Why can't it be something?
Are we done with all of them, or I wonder if there's like so many more?
I'm sure we're gonna. For some reason, we're getting through all the cloud stuff. We're getting that out of the way.
Well, I appreciate our sentient generator.
Sentient generator. As if sentient was a rank. I don't know if it sort of was both, but the reason, Spock's reasoning as to why it wasn't Kirk's nor Garevik's fault, in terms of that it doesn't matter if they had shot on time, it wouldn't have mattered, that we tried shooting with our phasers, nothing happened to it, the cloud. Mm-hmm. So your inaction caused nothing, which that should kind of only half count, because it doesn't really matter. You still hesitated in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean in their minds that you weren't a total coward for a moment, right? Just because there wouldn't have been an issue doesn't mean that would relieve the obsession or the guilt that was happening.
Well, it doesn't mean that there never will be either.
Right. Yeah.
Like that is an issue. You need to learn how to have those trigger reflexes, and you need to be able to make those drop of a hat moments notices, like quick split decision type things.
Yeah, Spock didn't come in and say, "Captain, I just want to confirm that yes, you chickened out, and if you had acted a 0.75 seconds earlier, it would have saved many lives, but you didn't. And just leave
right
after that.
Speaking as your first commanding officer and your friend. Yeah, so I do agree. I think that this is a proper Star Trek episode. I initially, about halfway through the episode, thought that it was not. Because I was thinking that the cloud, there wasn't quite enough sci-fi with the cloud. It was just it was Moby Dick for Kirk. Like there wasn't enough happening with the cloud. Like, you know, it attacked his previous ship, and now here it is again, whatever it is. But then, like, kind of in the latter half of the episode, there was enough sci-fi elements with the cloud for me to accept that, you know, yes, this episode, I mean, with tweaking, it could be used in a different show, but the script would have to be changed considerably, kind of in the third act for it to be used in a different series. Like the sci-fi element was enough inherent to the plot that you could take the broad strokes of it, but you couldn't take this script. And so,
right.
So yeah, just I originally thought that it wasn't, but I had already changed my mind before we started the podcast.
Yeah, and it, you know, solid episode. It's not like one of those episodes where we have to resign ourselves to the fact that it is a proper Star Trek episode, even though we didn't like it.
Right,
Voyager.
I'm looking at you. I mean, that does seem to be the Janeway.
Oh, nice! Ding, ding, ding. Ding.
All right.
Well, okay, before we see what we're watching next, just a little bit of housekeeping. I wanted to invite everyone. I know we do this every couple of, but we're going to beg. We're going to beg a little bit more. Please go leave a review about our podcast called The Measure of an Episode. Why am I always bad at this? I always suck at this part.
Well, what we're looking for is reviews actually on the podcast platform. So we have received a couple of reviews
Not to your mom.
On Facebook and on Patreon, which is great. Thank you so much to those of you who are doing that. But if you can send reviews, put out reviews on the actual platform, whether it's Outcast, Overcast, I don't know. You list them.
Overcast. But I think the most effective one is Apple Podcasts. So if you wouldn't mind, please leave a review. It really helps us. And if you want to go even further, we have a Patreon. If you want to get some perks, some side conversations that we have that get edited out. We talk about other superhero kind of type of stuff, or just random stuff like camping. That kind of stuff. Yeah. How much camping? How much fun could that be? Pay us $5 and you can hear about us talk about camping. But anyway, it would help us out if you could support the show in any way that you could, even just telling your friends about it. You know, your fellow Star Trekkers, Trekkies. There we go. Ha
You do not belong on this podcast.
Yeah, you're paying me way too much to be on this podcast. All right, let's see what we're watching.
Okay.
The Next Generation.
Yay!
I'm just gonna read it.
Okay.
The Next Generation.
Yay!
All right, one more time. No, Season 6, Episode 13, Aquiel. A-Q-U-I-E-L.
Okay.
Let me go into...
I would guess it's French. I would guess it's a Picard-centric episode.
God, I hope not.
Do you just not like character-centric episodes?
Right. I don't like... I like the character... I like them... I like the characters only when they're doing Star Trek stuff. Like, if this is one of those where he goes back to France and hangs out at his farm, I'm gonna hate it. Aquiel. Murderous intrigue abounds for the Enterprise when one of the crew aboard a subspace communication station is believed dead.
Huh. Oh my gosh, the thumbnail confused me so bad because it's so tiny on my laptop. I could not figure out what was next to Riker.
Well, they're both on their knees looking up somebody's skirt, is what it looks like.
And, I mean, it's the perfect two characters.
Like, Riker has just been like, hey, Jordy. Come here.
Commander.
Yeah.
Gosh, never mind, you missed it. All right, well, let's go watch it.